Hey there, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to reporters and editors and writers and all the people who are journalists and people who are putting stuff out. And we're going to do that in a moment. But in our second segment, we're going to do something a lot of fun. We're going to talk to one of the great Bronx boxers of all time. And she's fighting this weekend, as a matter of fact. And so we'll get you some insight as to what she's about. But we're going to have a much more benign segment right now, I think, with the senior reporter and editor covering housing and homelessness for City Limits. Welcome back to the Bronx Buzz, David Brand. Nice to have you with us, David.
Thanks for having me back on, Gary. I'll try to spice it up so we can
Yeah, yeah.
intro the next segment
We
too.
could spar it a little
Yeah,
bit. Yeah, I guess so. Listen, first thing, congratulations. You had a new baby, and
thank you.
much love to you and your family, and I hope everything works out. I'm sure everything will work out just wonderful. Let's just talk about community land trust. You wrote an article that says community land trusts would get first dibs at buying properties under revised council bill. That was the headline, and that was the story. What I'm interested in, and I know people in the Bronx, they are so frustrated over the course of time with all different kinds of development and say, finally, can we get communities to control our own destiny and our own properties? Where is this at? Start here and then we'll break it down.
Sure. So I think that kind of community land trust model is growing in New York City, growing gradually. There's several different organizations, but only a few of them are really up and running that actually own property. And so the concept is nonprofit organization organized as a community land trust buys the land underneath homes, and then they either rent out the apartments above that land, or they even sell it at affordable rates to uh, low middle income homeowners. And then people who live in that home, they can't resell it at an exorbitant rate. It really discourages speculation. They can take their equity. They could sell at a modest increase, but it keeps the homes, the property at permanently affordable rates.
And that certainly is music to the ears of the people in the Bronx. Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition was one of the many groups that have put stuff out to talk about, the trying to do this. So, what is the city council doing, and what is this new bill that they put out going to do to make this work? I mean, let's be honest. You want to take land that could be sold for a price
Mhm.
and turn it into something you say, oh, okay, we will grant you, maybe we grant you this land. That's a big ask. I mean, in plain language. On the other hand, maybe there's some real justice in it.
Yeah, well, this bill, which is sponsored or introduced by Carlina Rivera, Manhattan council member, would give these community land trusts and other nonprofit developers first dibs on properties that go up for sale. So it doesn't mean that they're definitely going to get these properties, but it gives them a little bit of a head start over,
A
for-profit
private
developers
developer.
or speculators. Exactly, and so they try to get the financing together. They try to make an offer that's competitive right now, because most of these community land trusts are in really early stages. There's not going to be that many opportunities to
Yeah.
buy, but when the right opportunity does come around, they'll have a head start, so they're not really competing against these like all cash buyers and people who just want to flip a property. So if people are excited about this. The Adams administration, I think, is supportive of the concept of helping community land trusts and nonprofit developers get a hold of these properties. They're skeptical, I think, right now because these CLTs, community land trusts, are still often in the early stages. But supporters of the bill, including Rivera, argue, well, this is how you grow this model,
Well,
by
you got to
giving
start
these
somewhere.
organizations the opportunity. Exactly.
You know what my follow up is going to be. Where does that money come from? I mean, you could look at many of the development corporations that there are not for profits all over. I'm concerned about the Bronx, of course, but all over the city.
Yeah.
They're not exactly flush with capital. And if
Right.
so you say they get first dibs. Will they be able to come up with the money with the greenbacks to really make a good offer and get a hold of this land?
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of the skepticism comes from,
I knew
and that's
that.
something that a lot of like the real estate lobby and landlord groups are saying, like, well, at this rate, you're just going to delay sales, and then they're not going to be able to buy them anyway. People who support the bill are hoping for a more dedicated funding stream that would support these nonprofit organizations and the CLTs. there's precedent for that. They've had a bill or they've had a law like this in Washington D.C. since the 1980s, and a few years after that law was enacted, they did create this dedicated funding stream to try to help these organizations
That
retain these
was, and my
properties.
next question was, so then the next step was once you define that this is what they want to do, then there's got to be some way of raising enough capital to
Yeah.
do this, whether it be governmental or otherwise. On that note, you look at 421A and all the other things that are out there, benefits for developers. I think it's reasonable for communities to say, and community organizations to say, well, if they're getting tax breaks, if they're getting the opportunity, why not us?
Yeah, that's a cool analogy. I think I think
All
people
right,
would
there
really
you go.
like to run with that one.
All right, well, you can use it the next time. You don't have to quote me. It's totally fine. Um,
I'll
and
cite the
and
show.
one of the things that I have heard was that there were a lot of properties and a lot of land. I mean, sometimes it's just yards and places and communities that are not developed, and rather than sell them to developers who might put up an 8 or 10 story building, and then you've got a whole question, the community can self-determinate. I mean, that's where we're going. Do you have a sense if council members are really for it? I know many Bronx council members. I can't imagine any would not be for
Yeah, I think it'd be a hard thing for people to like publicly come out against.
it. Oh,
If anything, they would probably maybe like wouldn't be
well,
like
yeah,
full throated supportive of it and say like, well, let's see how
right.
the ones that exist are going before they really like back it.
And
But
and
I think it's something a lot of people would support, at least the premise of it.
yeah, and of course, the mayor, okay, he likes the idea. When he sees the details, we'll find out how that turns out. Well, thank you for putting it out because I know that people in the Bronx are very interested in the concept. The next thing I want to ask you about is the whole process of the mayor moving homeless encampments out,
Mm. Hmm.
taking homeless people out. And then my initial reaction was, so what are you going to do with all these people?
Yeah.
And they're coming up slowly but surely. Every now and then you read about, oh, we now have a new shelter that's going to house maybe, I think there was one, there were 1,100 people. You wrote about the Bronx Welcome Center
Hmm.
that is out there. Tell me about, or tell us all about where this is at, and what are the possibilities? Is this an answer or the beginning of an answer to getting people off the street, or when they move them off the street, find them a place to go that's reasonable?
Yeah, I think that remains to be seen. I mean, the concept has a lot of support from advocates, from people who are staying on the streets and subways. So basically, they took a hotel that's long been used as a homeless shelter for either families or for single adults, and they turned it into what they're calling a welcome center. And so they're moving people directly from the subways, directly from the street, offering them a bed in a two-bed hotel room. There's about 84 beds in this hotel. It's got a television.
And
There's
where is
some
it located? Was it Morrisania?
yeah, Morrisania.
Right.
Yeah, like the 160s.
Right.
Uh, and so, yeah, the concept has a lot of support. That's what people say they want, like short of getting a room or
So
short of
these
getting a
these
key to an
are
apartment.
these are temporary shelters, and then they expect to move those people into housing. I say that hesitantly because that, of course, has been the dream since the beginning
Yeah.
of time.
Well, it's kind of the question about this model is like, so, it sounds great. Here is a bed in a semi-private room with a television with services. From here, you're going to move into housing. Sounds like the dream. Short of a key
I'm
to
at
a
the edge
permanent
of my
apartment.
seat. Yeah.
But the way they're framing it is that it's going to be like a temporary way station, and so people go into the hotel and they find what they consider a more suitable setting for them. My question to that is, if someone has a semi-private room with services on site, nice location, they like the roommate, why would you want to then leave to go to some other congregate shelter? So if it's short of a permanent apartment where you have your own key, you have a lease, not quite sure why someone would want to give that up to move into maybe
You
a
know,
room
I
they share with 15 other people.
that's pretty interesting. I hadn't thought of that because I mean I would think that the ultimate goal would be to always move into your own apartment. But
Yeah.
the way you just described it, why would you leave there to go to another sort of facility?
Yeah.
That's not the thing. So again, we're back to square one on this. Are there going to be mental health support
Mhm.
services? Are there going to be job development services available? Because otherwise, you're just moving them from the street into this place, moving them there. That's not
Yeah.
helping. But if you can find a way to embolden the families, or then you have half a chance.
Well, that's what people say, like advocates or people who are staying on the streets or subways say, like, why make this a way station? Why not just make this this type of
Oh,
model of shelter, and then people can stay there. It's more comfortable. It's more appealing, and then through there they can get permanent housing. And so instead of just moving them along, not
yeah.
knowing where they'll go once they leave, so people, I think, cautiously optimistic, but not sure how it's going to work out.
And well, so we're talking about one place. I mean, this is a big city with
Yeah,
5 boroughs,
yeah,
five very crowded boroughs. You're going to need a lot of these uh, in order to really do what they had said, that they were going to do. We got about a minute. What are the chances this proposal for steeper fees for building owners who have repeat heat outages? Do we anticipate this is something that's going to fly and finally put some teeth into legislation that will help people get warm again in the winter?
well, it has some pretty strong support. It's introduced by Bronx council member, head of the Housing and Buildings Committee, Piarina Sanchez. I think it's like kind of a first foray into holding property owners accountable for lack of heat, lack of hot water, not addressing hazardous conditions in buildings. And I think just in talking with her that this is kind of a first step into increasing those kinds of penalties and trying to put some more teeth into housing code enforcement. So kind of a modest increase. The fine right now is like $250. This would increase it to 500. So it's not
Well,
a
it's a
crazy
good
amount,
start.
but it's a start. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, much like the conversation on CLTs is a start. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Exactly.
where we're at here, and with a new, more progressive, open-minded council trying to be more creative with some grassroots ideas that have been around a while. But, stay tuned. We'll wait and see. Anyway,
That's
David
good.
Brand, the senior reporter, editor covering housing and homelessness for City Limits. Thank you. Congratulations on the baby,
Thank you.
and we're going to have you back. I can guarantee you that. And say
Okay.
hello to Jean Marie and all our friends over there.
Definitely. Thanks a lot, Gary. Always great to be on. Always great to see what books are behind you too. I gotta get
Oh
some.
yeah,
Always
yeah.
get some reading recommendations from that.
There you go. You got to know what's going on in the BX.
Definitely.
Anyway, we're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, as I said, we're going into the Bronx boxing world with really one of the great Bronx boxing champions, a woman, and Maureen Shea is going to join us.